talk to Rosalyn Abbott, a biomedical engineer at Carnegie Mellon University, about meat that's grown in a laboratory.
We're joined today by Rosalyn Abbott, Associate Professor of Biomedical Engineering at Carnegie Mellon University. You're co-leading a project to produce meat without sacrificing an animal. Can you explain for our viewers, what is lab-grown meat?
Yeah, so lab-grown meat is essentially making the same exact meat that you would buy in the store, but instead of using an animal to grow that tissue, we're creating it in the lab. So it's going to have the same cells, it's going to have the same structure as the meat that would normally be produced in an animal, but instead we are using techniques that were originally developed actually for regenerative medicine to grow cells, to grow tissues, in order to create that cultivated meat product.
So some very basic questions. Is it safe to eat?
Yes, yeah, it's the same thing as eating normal tissue or organs that you would from a cow or a chicken or anywhere else. Yeah, so in fact, it actually may be more safe because we can control the environment a lot more, so you're not as susceptible to like zoonotic diseases or other factors, and so it's a more controlled environment. So it has the potential to be even potentially more safe.
How does it compare nutritionally to traditionally, say, farm-raised chicken?
I think the researchers are really trying very hard to make sure that the nutritional content is the same. And I think it actually, again, has kind of this opportunity where we can actually tailor it to have even better profiles and more consistent profiles. If you're looking for like better fats, for example, that's something we're really interested in recreating, like that fatty acid, the healthy fatty acids in different meats. So we've got the same ability to kind of tailor it to improve it or to match it, depending on what the goal is.
Now, I've read about you working on projects related to chicken. Are there other types of meat also being cultivated at this time?
Yeah, so the ones that have made it through the regulatory pathways are chicken so far. So in the U.S., that's all that's made it past. But people are working on cow, so trying to create beef products. I've heard of people working on fish as well. So things like salmon potentially could be coming down the line. And actually even more kind of exotic tissues as well. So I think anything that you could really think of where we can get the cell sources, you could create. But I think we'll see more and more variety actually hitting the shelves in the near future.
What initiated the desire to have these projects working on lab cultivated meat?
Well, for us, there's a lot of different reasons. So there's the environmental impact. Our current agricultural system uses a lot of land, uses a lot of water. It has high greenhouse gas emissions. I know in my lab, we're concerned with the ethical impacts too. So it's less animals that would need to be slaughtered. You can also think about how energy efficient it could be. So if we can design these labs in order to be more energy efficient, that would be really good. It would also help with food security. As I mentioned before, these agricultural products can be susceptible to different diseases. So potentially making a more stable product. And then actually there's a really poor feed conversion. So in order to actually grow the animal, you actually have to feed it a lot, and so that actually is less efficient, and you can also do it much faster if you're just growing one tissue as opposed to growing the whole animal. So there's lots of different reasons, and I think different people get excited about different aspects of it. And I know even in my team there are some people that do really love meat, and that's why they want to do it, and then there's some that are vegetarians. So I think there's lots of different reasons that you can get involved.
How does lab cultivated meat compare to, say, traditional chicken in terms of taste and texture and those type of things?
So I actually haven't personally tasted the chicken, but I have read reports that it tastes very similar, and they've even done studies where they've blinded taste testers and they can't tell. So this is all secondhand knowledge, but I have a feeling it's going to taste real similar.
States like Florida and Alabama have banned cultivated meat. What kind of arguments have you heard against it?
Yeah, so I think in the case of even in Pennsylvania, they've been thinking too. I think they're really concerned about the farmers. At least I know in Pennsylvania they are, but I don't think that's a big concern because we're not trying to replace meat, and I don't think we ever will, but I think we're just trying to give people more options. And there's also an increasing demand for meat. So I think that there's room for multiple products in this space and just giving people choices, like the Impossible Burger, for example, that didn't displace any farmers when it was introduced. And so I think that that's one of the concerns, but I think that the farmers don't have to worry. There's plenty of demand for meat products. I think this is just going to give people more options. So that's one complaint that I've heard. I think also people sometimes don't know what the product actually is. And so I think education is something that's going to be super important so that consumers know what they're going to be buying and so that they can make an informed decision. And so sometimes when things are new, people don't trust them as much. And so we got to make sure that people trust the products that are going to make it to the shelves.
Since you brought up the issue of farmers' agriculture is Pennsylvania's #1 industry, have you received much feedback from members of the ag community?
Yeah, actually, the grant that's funding the research in my lab, we actually have a farmer on that grant because I did want him to be part of the process, and I wanted to get feedback. And so actually, he's very supportive. And so we have talked to farmers, and they think that there's room for both, and I don't think we're ever going to actually displace them, as I said before. But I think they're important, and they have a lot of knowledge related to these products too that they can help to inform it. So yes, we definitely have been talking to farmers and getting their input as well.
Let's talk about the economics of it a little bit. How much does it cost to generate or cultivate meat in a lab compared to raising it on a farm? And what do you see as the economic impact from the consumer side as well?
Yeah, so right now I will say it's more expensive to grow the cells in the lab, but there's a lot of research into this space. So the main component that's very expensive is media, which is basically this fluid that has amino acids and different nutrients that is needed for the cells to grow and to proliferate, to expand in number. And so that's very expensive right now, but people are working on creating better alternatives for that so that could be cheaper. So in the future, that won't be as big of a deal. Right now, actually, as I mentioned before, everything's been kind of with the regenerative medicine field in mind. And so the goal has been very different. And so the standards, I don't think, have to be the same for a food product. And so the media is a big expense, but that's something that people are working on. The other is kind of scaling up. So a lot of these are being produced in really small scale, so it's a lot more expensive. But as you scale up, that'll also decrease the price point. So right now it's definitely more expensive in the short term, but in the long term, hopefully it'll get to be similar.
When do you anticipate that lab-grown meat will be readily available to consumers?
I'm hoping soon. I think with this approval for chicken, I think that should be hitting markets very, very soon. I mean, I don't know what the time frame is for those companies, but I would say at least in the next 5 years for sure, if all goes well. So yeah, so hopefully we'll be seeing it soon.
If someone's grocery shopping, how will they be able to differentiate between lab-grown meat and something that's cultivated from a farm?
Yeah, so I'm not sure exactly how those labels will look, but I know that the community really likes the word cultivated because that's this idea of growing the cells, cultivating them. And so I think that that's a good term and that people have been using. And so I hope that continues to be a term as well, or maybe there'll be something better that comes along. But it will be labeled so people will know for sure. And so you can look out for those words.
Rosalyn Abbott, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.